Today we are joined by a fantastic lineup. We've got Annemieke de Jong. She's the Programme Manager for the Ikea Foundation, and she looks at their refugee strategy, so investing in the generation of evidence around refugee economic self-reliance through programmes in East Africa. So Annemieke is really looking at this from sort of funder's hat, but also from a sort of private sector perspective. We've got Diana Bonato, who's the Energy Officer at the UNHCR. So she's got a decade of professional expertise in renewable energy, in rural development and social enterprises. So really kind of brings that supranational view to this session. We've got Herbert, who I haven't yet seen him join, so hopefully he will be here. He's already in amongst us somewhere, but Herbert, if you can hear me, raise your hands. So he's the country manager in Rwanda for Energy for Impact. So they're an enterprise development, he's an enterprise, He is an enterprise development expert with 15 years experience in microfinance, but also energy access and project design delivery. And he is spearheading the energy component of renewable energy for refugees. So you'll hear people say RE4R, and that's the sort of shorthand for renewable energy for refugees. And their objective is to increase the livelihood opportunities for refugees in Rwanda. Laura Clark is also joining us. So she's the RE4R project manager, but sitting within practical action. So being a project manager, she's really looking at this across the different multi-stakeholder and multiple sort of country landscapes. She's also a former British Army officer of the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. She's got 17 years experience leading sort of technical staff, project manager, being an engineer, so we can ask her the difficult questions. And finally, but absolutely definitely not least, we've got Denise. She's the country manager for practical action. She's got 12 years of experience in international development and managing these multiple donor contracts with both humanitarian and development sectors, and she oversees the project delivery of renewable energy for refugees project in Rwanda. So a fantastic lineup. I hope you agree. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stop talking, and I am going to hand over to a video that the practical action team have put together. So hopefully this works. Bear with me 1 second. Well, that's given us all lots of food for thought. So I really want to turn to we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A with everybody first, but you've obviously just seen what this project and programme can do and looks like. But just as a sort of an overview, the Renewable Energy for Refugees project is delivering renewable energy solutions through innovative approaches in humanitarian settings, working directly with refugees in host countries, in a number of different communities in Rwanda, with urban refugees as well in Jordan. It's improving the quality of life and enabling refugees to move from reliance on aid to economic independence. And then, so for the purposes of this event, we'll concentrate on the project in Rwanda. So Laura, let me turn to you first, if I may. Could you give us a bit of an overview of the partnership and the roles of or for the Renewable for Energy for Refugees project, Laura?
Sure. So I'll give you a quick whistle stop of the partners and the relationships that we have for the delivery of RE4R. And I think one of the defining characteristics, and I think this will come across as the other panelists talk as well, is a number of partners, a number of stakeholders that are really working together to try and deliver this project successfully. And really, as partners, what we bring as a set of partners is a different set of experiences and approaches to really try and tackle those tricky issues that refugees face on energy access and some of the associated issues like economic resilience and quality of life. And you might recognise a number of these partners from previous work on the Moving Energy initiative. And there are a number of those partners on the panel and also some of those in the audience. So if there's any details that I don't cover in this introduction, any of the partners are on the call, please feel free to add them into the chat as well. So the project is supported by the Ikea Foundation, and it's being delivered in a partnership between the two partners, UNHCR and Practical Action. And whilst Practical Action have got a sort of long history of working in development settings, sort of with communities, particularly in areas of climate change, WASH and natural disasters, we don't have as much experience of bringing our approaches for energy access into those humanitarian settings. And this is where we really benefit from our partnership with UNHCR on this project. The idea is that we can bring some of our development approaches, some of our market systems development approaches, some of our total energy access approaches into a humanitarian context, but also really benefit from UNHCR's wealth of experience and the contextual understanding, and particularly the sort of protection mandate that really helps us to be able to tailor our approaches for the humanitarian setting and work together. And another great advantage, from at least from the Practical Action perspective, you might have seen our sort of strapline, which is big change, start small. Practical Action is a relatively small organisation, but by partnering with people like UNHCR and the Ikea Foundation, we really have the opportunity to scale up some of these approaches to really have a much wider impact and much more transformative impact than just the individual work on our individual projects. Quickly looking at a couple of our other partners as well, the project has a component that's being delivered in Jordan through our implementing partners, the Norwegian Refugee Council. And as Katie mentioned in the introduction, our work in Rwanda is also being supported by Energy for Impact, who are implementing a PUE for livelihoods component to really sort of bring that economic and livelihoods benefits alongside the energy access. In Rwanda, where we're looking at focusing for the project today, we also have multiple partnerships with private sector suppliers, agencies, other consultants and academic institutions, and of course we work very closely with refugees and communities themselves. And then, as if that wasn't, there's still some more partners to come. Building on the project's income implementation, we're also aiming to achieve this sort of wider impact and this really kind of transformational impact. We talk about reshaping the humanitarian response, and we're really committed to doing this through sharing evidence and learning, and also advocating for renewable energy solutions in humanitarian settings. And here we also partner with Chatham House and the Global Plan of Action, who really bring their advocacy and stakeholder engagement expertise and the sort of platform for RE4R to really be able to contribute to a global humanitarian energy agenda. So that's a quick introduction to the project partners and their sort of involvement in the bigger piece of RE4R.
Thank you so much, Laura. And therefore, I wasn't kidding when I said, multi-stakeholder partnerships. Let's look at some complexity. Annemieke, I want to bring you in now. You are the part of sort of Ikea Foundation. You helped put together this amazing sort of spectrum of partners. What is it? Why did you bring these organisations together? And what do you find works well? Let's sort of look at the sort of real practical piece of doing these quite complex partnerships. Annemieke?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm the Refugee Livelihoods Program Manager for Ikea Foundation, where I'm responsible for delivering on the ambitions that we have for refugees as part of the Foundation's overall climate and livelihood strategy. And through our strategy, we are hoping to help people afford a better everyday life on the one hand, but also protect the planet on the other. Of course, very much believing that we can do both at the very same time. But it's right that to do that well, it's important to bring together a diverse set of actors in looking for the right solutions. And that is something that our foundation constantly looks for, sort of the collection of actors well suited to work together on addressing climate and livelihood issues. What we find works well in partnerships are, I think, first of all, when partners have a very open and trusting relationship, where conversations are held often and in full transparency. We also see that when partners really understand what each brings to the partnership, so there are clear expectations of what each can deliver, and of course also that helps with understanding where limitations or gaps are. And we also see that where partners do have a really good understanding of who else plays a role in driving the solutions, what's the sector and the industry around it, what's the total network of actors that's needed to deliver on the solutions there. But I have to say as well, it's something we're still learning how to do better, especially for programming in humanitarian settings. And it's also because the foundation has focused its engagement in the humanitarian sector on bringing economic self-reliance to refugee and host communities, which also require a larger or a different set of actors to come together. And then specifically on these two partners coming together to, try to do anything but normal. Quickly running you through first the origin of the project. It's actually something that that came out of what we call a Good Cause campaign, which is our way, the foundation's way, to team up with our colleagues in Ikea Company. We're two very separate entities, but of course looking for ways to collaborate. And these Good Cause campaigns are a way to highlight the work that foundation grantees do. And an earlier campaign actually on energy was with UNHCR called Brighter Lives for Refugees. And that was a campaign where we helped to bring energy and education to 9 refugee hosting countries. And the funding was also used to help build the capacity at UNHCR on the topic of energy. And so we had another opportunity to join forces with IKEA again on an energy campaign in 2016, which eventually was called A Better Life Starts at Home. So for the company, it was a way to share how customers and co-workers could become what they call these accidental environmentalists, right? Where you can use a range of products designed to live a better life whilst helping protect the planet, but very much a way for the foundation to share the work that's done by organizations selected under their campaign who are bringing energy solutions to communities. And so it was sort of part of that process that UNHCR and Practical Action applied to the request for proposals. We had UNHCR apply, they were invited to do so due to the experience that they had in the Brighter Lives for Refugees campaign, and also our desire as an organization to continue to program for energy interventions for refugees and displaced populations. I believe Practical Action wasn't the partner of the foundation at that time, but very much on our radar, and we wanted to invite them due to the organizational strengths and track record in what Laura was just now describing in their work and in the approaches they take, and also, of course, in delivering on energy solutions. So I guess it was during the first few steps of us selecting the partners that we asked if they would be willing to team up, and we wanted to as well, instead of funding 2 separate projects in light of bringing more efficiency to the work. I think first it was an opportunity to bring the unique strengths that each of them could lever, as Laura was also saying. UNHCR, of course, with their mandate on for refugees, Practical Action in this case on delivering on energy. We also hope that by setting it up as a partnership sort of from the design onwards, it would contribute to greater coordination and alignment between parties. And of course, that would then lead to more impact in the countries of investment. And we also hope that to contribute to more efficient humanitarian programming by introducing ways of working through sort of a multi-partner design that was based, I guess, on each stepping in sort of on the same terms and conditions, as it were. So luckily, both of the organizations were very willing to do this, and that's why it became a joint program. Back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Annemieke. So yeah, lots of background there. I want to turn, you mentioned UNHCR, I want to turn now to Diana. Diana, why are partnerships so important for delivering energy in particular, but in general, in sort of humanitarian contexts? Diana?
I am mute. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. Hello, everybody. And I'm Diana Benato, Energy Officer for UNHCR. And I just want to say that I'm now in the headquarters in Geneva working, but I come from the field operation. I was there for 3 years, working for access to energy implementation. And why I say that is because while I saw the video before, I always get a little emotional because I just recall, my work there, that can be Rwanda, can be Ethiopia, can be many places, and how this experience that I have in the in various continents as well, in the private sector, development sector, and now in the humanitarian sector, how this all experience helped me now that I am in a headquarter, more coordination manager, to bring the reality with me and translate it in the implementation of the strategy. Sometimes strategy can be a little dry. And exactly, I want to introduce the energy strategy for UNHCR, because as Laura and Annemiek already say a lot about this partnership, it's UNHCR has this strong legal protection mandate, but recognize energy as a part of a basic need for refugees and people of concern. And also UNHCR recognize a lot this willingness to align the energy strategies with the goal 2030, that is to bring, enable refugees, the host community and people of concern to meet that energy needs in a safe and sustainable way. So the UNHCR energy strategy has 4 strategic areas. The first is energy from the outset in emergency. Then we have improving access to clean cooking energy, and then expanding electrification for household and the community and the facility, supporting facility. So this is let's say the strategic area, but also the strategy highlight very much the way we should implement this strategy. And there are 2 main points that I would like to highlight. One is through evidence-based implementation, so reliable data, and the partnership. So that was the initial question. It's a little long introduction, but to say that we do recognize the potential multi-partnership collaboration, and basically the typical things we will achieve more if we work together. So, and what is important, why is important the partnership is basically that each party brings their respective expertise. What we each part in. So the role of UNHCR and as the other panelists already include is it's this definitely the humanitarian sector, be a leading organization for refugees. We bring all our expertise in this sector, but also the data that we have on our people of concern population. And we bring the communication with the government, the advocacy to basically that we have to create an enable environment to allow the refugees to participate in the economic activity, what we always call the market-based approach, boosting the self-employment. And so basically we want to play, and we play this catalytic role to attract the other sector, in this case, the development sector, actor, the government authority, the private sector, in a field that for us, where we are strong, this protection mandate, humanitarian. So to do kind of this bridge to attract the other actors in the multi-partnership approach. And yeah, this is basically we are strong in this, and then when why is important is to basically bring the expertise that we might need. Like for example, we need this development expertise from other partners. Need the technical expertise in energy access, in renewable energy, and so on. So the private sector, I would say the alive, the strong of the private sector could come with new idea and to push towards a sustainable solution and so on. So this is why we are strongly committed in our partnership approach. Over to you.
Thank you, Diana. So for everybody listening, that's obviously the sort of setup for why these multiple stakeholder partnerships came into fruition. Before we get into sort of what this looks like on the ground, and hearing from both Denise and Herbert, we're just going to listen to you and hear see one more little bit of a video, which is very looking what this experience looks like on. So bear with me as we go with it.
So my name is Bertil Kamire. I'm a field officer in the Gihembe refugee camp. Refugee camp hosts Congolese refugee.
I am Mohile Evariste, and I work for Practical Action as a field officer in Nyabiheke refugee camp. Between Practical Action country office and the camp management, you see, we are working in the camps, and this needs the smooth communication, smooth relations, smooth coordination and partnership.
There are small businesses, shops, mobile money, canteens. There are even bars inside the camp.
They don't have the same chance as Rwandans, obviously, because they are refugees and they have, different and many challenges in their daily life.
Partners would invest, we're investing in other areas than energy, yet the assessment showed us that energy would also be an essential thing for human being lives. Refugee leaders and security patrollers currently are praising the role of streetlights to changing the lives of refugees.
We have about 932 households equipped with solar home system. Streetlights has brought different solutions regarding their effectiveness. There is free movement. Refugees can easily access to common infrastructures. We've seen young people playing during the night. So briefly, there is a smile, there is hope, there is happiness in the camp because of our interventions. I really wanted to recognize our partnership with our stakeholders, our partners, especially refugees, because they really play a great role for achievement of our objective there in the camp.
So hopefully that gives you a bit more of a flavour of what's going on. So to bring in Denise, projects like RE4R involve multiple stakeholders, as we've just talked about, sort of almost from the sort of group level. What does this mean at a sort of camp and regional and international level? What are the challenges and opportunities of quite frankly, delivering this sort of partnership?
Yeah, thanks very much, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm very delighted to see most of the people that I know on the call. Hi, everyone. And thanks from the field coordinators. It's a bit challenging to answer between Lola and the video that the field coordinators just shared, but I will try to focus my answers on the practical examples of how actually those relationships or partnership works. Yeah, relationship with refugees, refugee groups, government, humanitarian organization, private sector, and others are needed. First, to understand the context and the demand, so you can design intervention that are super tailored to the context, to get feedback on what is working well and what isn't working, and to adjust the project work, but sharing evidence and learning to inform everyone that is working in the camps. And I think you can get it from how Evariste ended up pleasing the partnership that you have with different stakeholders. I mean, in the from the beginning, most of the people working in the camps were like sharing almost the same responsibilities as us who are leading the implementation. Yeah, one of the examples of how the relationships worked well as working with the community camp managers, and we also worked closely with UNHCR protection colleagues when we were setting up or coming up with streetlight location to ensure that we are positioning streetlights in the locations that can achieve greater protection impact. And with our experience, without UNHCR experience into the camps, and actually refugees themselves, knowing where they want the lights, and of course, Minema wouldn't have been able to achieve to install the 185 streetlights across the 3 camps, which are fully functional now with zero incidents of vandalism, and it has achieved transformative impact for people living in the camps, as you had field coordinators saying this. I say vandalism with a bit of emotion, because when we were starting our assessment, getting into the camp for the first time, there were empty poles of vandalized streetlights and a number of other things. So we were a little bit nervous. So having them for more than a year now, more than 18 months now, with zero vandalism is a good thing to please the relationships. Yeah, when we went for commissioning the streetlight, I feel like I should mention this. We were talking to refugees, especially the group in charge of security, and they were describing me each light, like they have a description for each light, the specific location, and what that light serves for. Like, we didn't even need numbering or identification numbers for the lights, because they understand the light like they understand their household items, and this was super interesting, and it was giving me hope of the sustainability. Yeah, throughout the project, we had to make allowances to ensure that we are appropriate for a displaced setting. We had to weigh up what is appropriate for a humanitarian approach and, take what we can add in from the sustainable development. And this made the partnership with UNHCR super important. Lola and Amike and Diana spoke about bringing together experience to develop solutions that work. And this was a perfect kind of example of that. Yeah, we were responsive to refugees' voice. We had to listen and respond. And to do this, we worked very closely with refugees and refugee representation bodies, and the refugees themselves at all levels. We had to involve them at all stages as agents, as technicians, as advisors, and as owners. And this had to start from the assessment stage. There was no way we would have, involved them from the middle and, get them to the level we are, where they now call us partners rather than, other NGOs implementing things in the camp. We're constantly learning. Yeah, we are trying to turn theory into practice, if I can put it that way. And this is not, this is very challenging. It's not an easy fix. A market-based approach in theory is great, but in practice, it's very dynamic. It requires a lot of multi-actors, negotiation, adaptation, and balance. COVID just broadened our learning, where things changed quickly, and how we had to work with all partners, to try and work on recovery methods. But everything can change and affect the whole thing. So multi-actor involvement, those relationships are very important from all levels. Some of the challenges, well, I'm going to mention a few of the challenges, but most of the challenges were linked to expectation and understanding of a different level. Yeah, as I said, we are challenging the status quo. We're trying to prove to people that market can work into the humanitarian settings. We're trying to say that refugee can have the same right and responsibilities as other customers. And this was the first of its kind. So we needed some time to build foundation through soft component, which was difficult because our work was not seen, was not able to be seen on the ground. Yet stakeholders were used to organization achieving scale. Yes, scale is important and we measure it at the outcome level, but we wanted to get to the SOGRAD at the impact level. And this needed a lot of soft component work to do with inclusion, ownership, etc., so we can be able of our impact being long-lasting. I remember one time, I think on the second year, at the beginning of the second year, the government took so long to approve our report. So most of the things we're reporting were, market-based up, the market systems analysis, trainings, awareness raising, a number of what they call meetings and trainings, which for them, they wanted street lights. And you can understand them, every evening we also was a lost opportunity for those ladies selling things under the street lights to make their life. It was a lost opportunity for someone like Ngabo in Nyabeke to start doubling his income. But we wanted to make sure that also people like a group like Indahikirwa can be literally translated as unbeatable, which is benefiting from the revolving fund. And we needed to understand that they required a different kind of approach so they can afford the solar home system and also make a living. And the revolving fund is benefiting now 250 refugees, which is, it is still in its pilot phase, yet we had started seeing impacts. So we were pressurized to achieve scale, but it was very important to, now partners have started that it was very important to also spend some time building those soft components. And lastly, working with private sectors, we have different expectations. They want market. They want profit, they need profit. Yet we are, talking to them to going beyond selling the product, but also reporting, monitoring, collecting feedback, and acting on that feedback. So we had to work with them to give them data, information, help them visit the camp, establish partnership and facilitate access to the camp, and we'll make sure they understand the market. Make sure they understand what we are trying to achieve beyond just selling solar home system, beyond just installing a street light. Now, 2 suppliers have entered the market, and as field coordinators, they have installed street light solar home system into 50% of the household in those 3 camps. It's something that we are still celebrating. I think I dream about it every night. And then working with them, we gather data on feedback, and then we help them to adjust. One of them have changed the product, and they have adjusted some of the things into their business model since they started. And then on working with UNHCR and other organization, humanitarian organization, we have just had a non-customer survey to understand people that are not reached by our project. And UNHCR have just shared information with other organizations on vulnerability on household, which we can probably not gather as best as them. And it's helping us to try to adapt our model to reach the people that we are not reaching. Thanks, Katie. Over to you.
Wow, talk about a system approach, Denise. Just the idea of trying to gather all the data for all the different stakeholders sounds like there's enough to, well, yeah, keep you up at night. Herbert, I want to bring you in at this point. You obviously, your Energy for Impact, you're sort of the partner on the ground with Practical Action. Can you provide some of your practical insights from the work you're up to?
Thank you very much, Kate, and thanks for Practical Action. I'm very happy to be in this partnership. As Energy for Impact, we bring our expertise in productive use in the partnership, and we are bringing this from our previous experiences in Rwanda and other countries, because our perspective is is that is seeing energy beyond just the normal or the basic uses of writing and powering productive, small household appliances. We believe access should lead to increased opportunities for the people. So in the case of refugees in Rwanda, before the RE4R project started, we found that most of the services, basic services within the camps were missing, and they could not be available. Just basic things like meat, basic things like milk, basic services like printing and the internet. Things, other services like dressmaking were just being done basically. They were just as basic as the manual machines that were being used. And whenever somebody would want maybe to do a more complicated design, this would mean the tailor or the businessman moving out of the camp and to get those designs fixed. And so this was the situation, and this meant more operating costs for the enterprises. It meant also more time being spent, and also services not being available, basic services not being available within the camp. So, but thanks to the RE4R project, this is changing now, and more individuals and the groups of women and men have started appreciating or getting advantage of the productive use of energy. Opportunities have been brought by increased access. We have seen activities such as improved dressmaking happening. We have seen some entrepreneurs getting engaged in animal feed production. We have seen increased number of youth getting engaged in offering internet services. We have seen people making shoes that can also be sold out of the camp. And just to name a few examples, because we have so many activities which are happening as a result of increased access and the fact that the entrepreneurs now can be able to see other opportunities. So we have also seen increased technical knowledge among entrepreneurs. And a good example is a group of women in Kigeme refugee camp. This is a group of women who are able to identify what they need in their business in terms of automated machines, and acquired 5 sets of electric machines that is actually improving their production. And through the support that they are getting through this project, they are able to expand their market through commercial linkages. And this is a group also that has been able to attract a tender from UNHCR and World Vision to supply school uniforms. So another example is a group of youth in Kiembe refugee camp. These are youth who started a cyber cafe and the printing services, and they were able to attract printing services from COS. Another example is a group of milk vendors in Yambieke who are able now to supply milk throughout. Initially, they could only collect and distribute everything they collect, otherwise it would go banned. But currently, they have preservation equipment, so they can collect more milk, preserve it, and make sure that that milk is available to the refugees at any time. We have also seen increased capacity of refugees to manage their enterprises, and witness a steady increase in profitability for their businesses. Financial institutions are also seeing an opportunity in terms of coming up with a product for these enterprises. This is because the enterprises have proper structures that can be leveraged by the financial institution to give them loans. So what this translates to is actually increased livelihood opportunities to the refugees in terms of increased incomes, in terms of job opportunities, in terms of services that were not available before, but currently are available. So the RE4R project is actually changing the mindset of the refugees and making them more economically independent and also thinking beyond the simple grants. The grants most of them rely on. So thank you.
Brilliant, some really useful things there, Herbert, thank you. We have got absolutely tons of questions coming in to the chat, so panellists, be ready. If you have got a question, please do add your thoughts to the chat. You'll see there's also fantastic links in there. There's all sorts of introductions. I think there's more networking going on in the chat than anywhere else, so head over there if you haven't already. My first question, I would love to ask both Laura and Denise. So we have had a couple of questions actually in already, looking or asking about actually how do you potentially join this partner if you're an innovator on the ground and you want to be part of a partnership like this or get involved, or even if you're a sort of you've got an enterprise piece that you would want to reach into and see camps in general. So Laura, Denise, I wonder whether you would mind picking up that question.
Yeah, so maybe if I can just talk a little bit about sort of some of the barriers we saw at the start of the project to sort of private sector and sort of these sort of innovators entering the space. And one of the key barriers we saw was a lack of awareness and a lack of contextual understanding and a need for information on both sides. So both from people with products and services that they might want to offer, and also from the refugee community in terms of what kind of things, what kind of energy products and solutions might work for them and might address their needs. And I would say alongside sort of our private sector engagement and facilitation, we've also done a number of kind of general awareness raising activities in the camps, looking at helping people to understand the benefits of renewable energy, sort of in terms of health, in terms of quality of energy provision, in terms of affordability in some cases. And so I think certainly in the 3 camps that we're working, that kind of awareness and that kind of understanding and that word of mouth that was also built on from that has been a real factor in sort of setting the conditions for people to be able to enter that space. And then also on the other side, we've also got a big body of data and evidence now about how refugees are choosing to use these products, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what their spending patterns are, what they like, what they don't like. You know, we've got a wealth of customer feedback, as do our sort of private sector partners. And that data, some of it we've already made publicly available, but there'll be more to come, and we're completely willing to share that with people who are interested in moving into this space. So yeah, if you're interested, we can signpost you to where some of that data is available already, and also there'll be more to come going forwards.
Free marketplace like any other. Denise, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Lola said it all.
Cool. I'd love to turn to Annemieke and Diana. So there are a couple of questions around, I've got 2 questions for you that have come in. One is around how do you keep the private sector interested? So I'd love to hear from both your sides, like what is it that fundamentally is it interesting about joining such a complex partnership from a private sector, and how do you stay engaged? And the second one is the question, which I hear quite a lot through Business Fights Poverty, around advocacy. Are these sorts of projects in a place where you would take them up to talk to other and engage other stakeholders? So there was a question around sort of government engagement. Are they such sort of, is there appetite from the private sector to get involved with such sort of advocacy pieces too, or is it sort of too early stage or potentially too sensitive at this time? So Diana, perhaps if you wouldn't mind, I'll just turn to you to start with to add your thoughts to that one.
Sure. So as we said before, and we repeat it, the private sector is crucial to achieve this sustainable change, this sustainable solution in the long time. And as a humanitarian organization, this is something that we have to recognize, and we learn about it. For how much also we want to attract the private sector, we realize exactly how we keep the private sector interested. But not only in the interest, because we are working with the refugees, maybe rural, far location, but also in many locations security problem. So like the private sector is like, wait, no, how do I reach there? Especially in the investment or like the supply chain is very, maybe is weak. So this is exactly where we are focusing now in strengthening this, this part where the private sector can come and feel comfortable to invest. So we are doing a lot of work on what we call it the risking mechanism, where maybe UNHCR is a sort of anchor client, or we have like a pool of funds as a revolving funds where sort of insurance if something goes wrong. And we are looking at leasing mechanism, and so this from maybe more for the big also facility, but for the little reality, like in the community, we are working maybe doing community cooperatives, so energy cooperatives, where the refugees itself mixed with the host community are already starting working, like also Denise were already explaining in Rwanda, so similar mechanism. But this seeing that there is already a starting point in the community itself attract the private sector. So these are some of the work we are doing to keep the private sector interested in the humanitarian sector.
Thank you, Diana. And Annemieke, is it working? Love your thoughts.
Yeah, great. And I apologize. I don't know if my the video seemed to switch off last time, so hopefully I'm on now. Okay, great. Brilliant. Apologies for that. But no, on the first point on keeping private sector interested, just I think a clarifying point as well from our end. And again, coming in as Ikea Foundation, we're of course a philanthropy linked to a private sector. So, you know, when we look at our company counterpart, they perform a very different function and offering different benefits to supporting their own communities, right? So if you look at the company, they run a very, very diligent, very rigorous, people and planet positive strategy that allows them to work with communities directly, of course, take care of their own staff and the customers, but also, again, like I said, in that market where they're operating, be a very active and conscious actor. As the philanthropy linked to that, of course, we're trying to include the values of doing that as best as we can. So there's a lot of alignment in the culture, the way of working, etc., that we try to apply through our philanthropic spending. And so I would say that, and I think Diana's example of sort of a de-risking facilitation is actually something that philanthropy could take on really well. I think that's the kind of flexible funding, the more risk-worthy funding that these areas could absolutely use in trying to bring to scale solutions that we see work when they're going through pilots. So I would say that that's something that hopefully more and more actors interested in supporting communities would look at, right, in using that funding that they have available towards that. And so that is, I mean, I think just to say from a foundation perspective, the desire to program, the fact that we're actually allowed to fund the way we do comes from the same philosophy, the same vision that the company has. It's about the many people. It's about driving solutions that are both keeping people safe, helping to afford a better life, but also very much protecting the planet. So it's that same spirit. And you asked a question about advocacy as well, and how we as private sector philanthropy in this case see our role there. And I think it's something that we've also learned how to do, I guess, as we grow. I mean, as a IKEA Foundation, we're still fairly small, fairly young, about 10 years old, which isn't that old. Also a very lean organization. But I think we're getting better at supporting our partners in understanding what is needed to drive an advocacy agenda. And I think some of my colleagues here already have mentioned the importance of of understanding data, having the data with you to drive more evidence-based programming. And I think that's your starting point. What actually are we doing? What are we talking about? What are the gaps, the limitations, and who are the actors needed, or the set of actors needed to really deliver on that? And I think that sort of that's a good starting point. And then to design these influencing and these expansion strategies to engage the right actors to then enable the environment for larger scale up, to look at more innovative financing. To do that, I think is something that we as a foundation are also increasingly looking at in this space. It actually it explains why in our refugee work, that's the specific attention we've now got on our strategy, this evidence generation to influence greater policy and practice as well. Thanks, Katie.
So watch this space, everybody. There's more to come. Denise and Herbert, I'd love to turn to you. There are a couple of questions in the chat, which also questions I really want to know. One, Denise and Herbert, what did you do differently to stop your streetlights from getting vandalised that everybody else's before you had? Like, did you paint them with strawberry jam and everybody wanted them or didn't want to touch them? I don't know. And the other question was about biogas, and is that of interest to you guys, or is it purely sort of the solar or sort of renewables that you're looking at?
Yeah, thanks very much, Katie, and thanks, Lola, for asking that question. Let me start with the streetlight question. Yeah, I also asked myself that question because everything we were doing, I felt like it was not enough, but we reached to the point where we thought we've done all we had to do to make sure that they're going to stay there. Yeah, one of the things that people assume is that when people can simply start seeing the impact of something. But unless you involve them and make them understand the issue that is created by the lack of something of that's when they can smoothly adjust and actually understand the goodness that comes with it. So one of the things we did was creating awareness. Refugees are the one who showed us priority locations for us to set street lights. And those locations were associated with what that light is going to do, as I said. So they understand them and they know what the light is going to help them with. And they feel like the light belongs to them. And that is each particular light. So creating that ownership, making sure they understand why the lights are being put there, not just the benefit associated with, creating access, limiting theft, which was reported severally, reducing incidents of safety, and we've had people reporting how they have, energy have given them agency or independence on how they use their time. So that was where we invested so much of our energy and so much of our time. And that's where we started being questioned on why we talk about lights without installing them. But also we didn't stop there. We also worked on the technology. When we were doing our procurement, we made sure that our supplier understands that vandalism issue exists in the camp. And we also made them visit the camp. And we made the supplier talk to the refugees, actually, understand them, understand what they are actually want and what they think can work for them. So they designed the technology that is not easy to temper. I'm saying not easy, but I'm not saying impossible. And they understood, they designed a kind of a monitoring system, which they could also use as a way of repairing a light in case it needs troubleshooting and stuff. But we also wanted a technology that will not make the light so expensive. So we were trying to find a balance there, and we are glad we found one. Yeah, and on the working and using biogas for clean cooking, we are focusing on renewable source of cooking with our cooking intervention. So biogas is not in there, but looking, and this was part of the Ikea Foundation strategy, but also looking the realities into the camps, the biogas technologies that can work there are very few. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Denise. Herbert, do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, but I think Denise has covered everything.
I thought she might have done. She's on it. She knows everything. As the questions continue coming in through the chat, anybody who's on the listening into this session, please do add your questions into the chat function. Also, if you want to share contact details, clearly it's a bit difficult sharing your personal details through chat sometimes, but you might want to share your LinkedIn profile or your Twitter handle or some sort of social media, and sometimes that's a bit easier and feels a little bit less threatening for yourself. You're not going to get spammed by a whole load of crazies, me mostly. I want to pick up with the whole of the team at this point, really looking at what's the kind of key learnings, if you could keep it to a sort of minimum of 3, that you would share now in hindsight, or perhaps it was something you already knew, with anybody who was in a sort of similar type organisation to yourself when embarking on such a partnership, say complexity and also in these sort of locations. Perhaps, Herbert, could I start you in terms of what have you learned that you would really want to pass on to somebody else who's about to do what you're about?
Thank you, Kit. One of the learning is that refugees as a entrepreneurial potential like any other person out there, what they need to be given is that opportunity, the resources, and also an environment that can be able to unleash their potential. There is also the importance of coordinating all the players together, bring all the players together, especially the players who support enterprises and of course energy access. And if these players work together for a common goal, then more will be achieved within a shorter time in terms of the impact that we are making in the camps. So refugees do as good as we are doing. I mean, everybody outside the camp is doing, and they also need to be given that opportunity and they're supported to move on.
Brilliant. Annemieke?
Yeah, thanks. And coming at the question from the donor perspective here, I think, and although some of the components are absolutely there, and Laura also mentioned the wealth and the breadth of the evidence that's come out of this program specifically, but I think what we've learned as an organization is allow, I guess, the time and the resources for that design component to really make sure that the partnership with however many partners is set up as best as it can. That's one. And I would also say,
Annemieke, I might have lost you there for a moment. Hold on, you've gone on mute. Come back. There
oh, am I there? Oh,
yeah, we just lost you, and I would also say.
Okay, great. Not sure, apologies there again. But yeah, also say that more emphasizing, I think, that role of that evidence generation within programs, and I think for donors as well, something to look more carefully at, because it is expensive. It does require people, it does require time, but absolutely critical if we want to have an honest and true debate or conversation, not a debate I should say, but a conversation to bring the evidence to the policymakers and to the actors in the industry and the sector to make those changes. So I think that's something that we're also hoping to do more of, and that links to that last point that our colleague in the chat box asked about, that advocacy. I think going forward as well, be more clear about what we might want to do there and what the elements may be missing, or the resource that may be missing, to make sure that that's successful as well. Thank you.
Great advice. Thank you very much, Annemieke. Diana?
Sure. From a UNHCR perspective, I would say that this example with RE4R, it's this partnership with the Ikea Foundation, Practical Action. It's what we learn is basically that it's another example of multi-partnership that is working well, is successful, and we have other in energy project sector. We have other multi-partnership of this kind. we are with, for example, when it comes to me is with BMZ, that as well is giving funds to GSA to provide the technical expertise together with UNHCR. So these are for us all sort of case study of example that that are successful and how we want to, we are planning to continue this modality in the future. So this is, I think, it's for us, a proof that this is where we are going is good for us.
Thank you. Denise, what advice would you pass on to?
Thanks very much. I mean, as I said, RE4R implementation has been a learning roller coaster. So I would say I've learned a lot. But the major thing I would highlight is the fact that, which is something I learned from the assessment and kept noticing throughout the implementation, is the fact that refugees didn't need the giveaway product and other kind of intervention, but they rather needed jobs. They needed economic independence. And this was proven during the implementation of PU and revolving fund and other, all our interventions. And then Robert puts the entrepreneurial potential in a very clever way. I never realized that $100 or less $100 loan would change someone's life, like can make someone earn a living, pay back the loan and purchase a solar home system if it's coupled with appropriate business skills and entrepreneurship skills and accompanying the person all the way to becoming an entrepreneur. I never realized that such an amount of money can make difference. And then the advice is again, we all know that there is no one model that fits for all, and refugees' contexts are actually very specific because we see them all as vulnerable, but there are different levels of vulnerability into the camp. So tailoring different kind of intervention at different kind of levels is very important for the success and ensuring inclusion. Thank you.
Great advice. Thank you very much, Denise. Laura.
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect maybe on the importance of kind of openness and frankness and kind of sharing what's working and what isn't, and then working together to kind of adapt and overcome those challenges, because we're talking about complex issues here. There's no easy fixes, and having such a breadth of partners and being able to allow those partners to bring their strengths to try and address what are quite complex issues really depends on that openness, that frankness, and that understanding of each other as well. And I think, on RE4R, the project's been running since 2017, having that time to build that understanding of each other, build that self-awareness, build that understanding of what strengths and what works for each of those partners in this context, I think is key to addressing what are these really complex but really important issues to address for energy access in this context. Thank you, Laura.
And then my sort of final piece, and I'm going to hopefully wrap up. There are a couple of people who haven't had their questions answered, and I'm hopefully going to wrap them up into this final one, which is picking up on something that Denise just mentioned around kind of, the immense capabilities and opportunities that some of those refugees can kind of really unlock. So 2 questions. One is, how can we further really unlock the potential and unleash the amazing power of those refugee communities, or potentially the individuals, as you say, Denise, we should never see them as a holistic, homogenous group. And then second part of my question is, what's next for you? I mean, clearly 2020 for some has been one that they want to put behind them, but what next? What are you most excited about? What's the kind of call to action that you want everybody to hear on this call? So Laura, perhaps back to you to start with, and we'll go back round.
So looking ahead for the RE4R project in particular into 2021 and beyond, I think we've had a really interesting experience with the COVID situation, particularly in Rwanda, to really test how some of these developments and some of these changes that we made are going to sustain themselves once sort of practical actions part in this project finish, and we've had some really good examples of the way that people have adapted to do things during lockdown periods and during restrictions of access to this, which has really helped us to learn some of the things, maybe some of the gaps that we have, but also some of the things that refugees have been able to come up with themselves. And I think as we move into the back half of 2021, towards the end of the project, we're finishing in the first quarter of 2022, we've got a real opportunity to build on that learning from the COVID experience and make sure some of that resilience and the lessons that we've learned about how to make sure these interventions sustain themselves in a longer period, we really implement them towards the back end of the project. We've had, although COVID has been a really horrible experience and has made the project really challenging in lots of ways, it's also been an opportunity for us to learn. So yeah, some good opportunities to embed that in the back stages of the project.
Thanks, Laura. Diana.
Clearly, to keep going, I think we already say many times, but again, I stress the point to have an enabling environment. As I say, like really advocate and talk with the government to have basically refugees included in the program, as well with the development sector, to include all people of concern in them. Not only global program, but also national and local. So this is essential because, of course, without the support of the government, of the local authority, this cannot happen. And regarding the future for UNHCR, as I say, we have an energy strategy. We have a goal 2030 to bring basic energy needs to all the people of concern. So we definitely, each by year, we will not stop. What we want is expand and strengthen the program that we have already in some countries operation to bring it to all our refugees community.
Fantastic, thank you, Diana. Herbert.
Well, thank you. I know in 2020 was also a challenging time for us for the same reason as Laura mentioned. Bearing in mind that our work involves a situation where we work very closely and in most cases, basically with the people we support. And of course, this also brought another set of opportunities for us. We became more innovative in the way we support our entrepreneurs, and we learned other ways like remote support, creating strong supply chain for the inventory. That is through creating linkages between suppliers and entrepreneurs, and also linking with the suppliers within the camp. I mean, those were some of the innovations that we thought and we never thought about previously. So going forward, we are looking at making sure that the refugees also can be able to look beyond what they are doing, the basic services they are offering within the camp, to look beyond that. We want to see an expanded market for refugees, not only within the host communities, but also in the neighboring town, where they compete for the same markets as the established enterprises in any other city in Kigali. And of course, we have been able to support a small number of enterprises. We are also looking for other opportunities to support more refugees and to ensure that, of course, we transform more refugees from grant receivers to economic people who are developing the economies within their areas.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Herbert. Annemieke, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future for you, how to unlock that potential.
Great, thanks. And of course, when it comes to RE4R, of course, we're there with the partners as Laura was describing. There's still a lot of things ahead, and wanting to use the lessons as much as we can to build on for all of our other areas of work too. I would say for the foundation too, I mean, we're trying to work on supporting particularly children in growing up in safe and stable families as much as we can by contributing to removing threats to that well-being of children. And so on the one hand, of course, making sure that through our climate action work, we're helping to decarbonize economies, but also through our livelihood strategies, very much make sure that we're helping to pioneer new ways of working that contribute to. So we have through our agricultural work looking at circular and regenerative techniques and processes. Of course, through our renewable energy work, making sure that it contributes to productive use and help reduce pressure on the environment that way, whilst we're offering, whilst we're helping entire communities, of course, actually access energy, right? And of course, through some of our other areas of work, making sure that when people are working, it's decent, it's fair, it's sustainable, etc., it's safe. And in all of that, particularly refugees are a group to make sure they're included, they're not left behind, they're very much part of all of the things that together as a foundation we're looking to pioneer and to show new models of. And that's going to be next for the refugee work as well. It is absolutely about making sure the investments are contributing to understanding economic self-reliance for refugees, what works, what doesn't work, and in that, making sure we're protecting the planet as best as we can. And in that, of course, renewable energy is going to be very important in enabling families to thrive and businesses to grow. Thank you.
And Denise, that leaves you to wrap up in terms of your unlocking potential. You've already mentioned it a bit, but what does 2021 look like for you?
Yeah, thanks very much, Kate. I won't repeat that 2020 was difficult, was challenging, but it sharpened us in a way, as Lola and Herbert mentioned. And we've been trying to capture those learning and share with organizations here in Rwanda and beyond Rwanda, and trying to implement a renewable energy project. When you asked this question, I actually thought of one instance. There was a donor who was to visit camps, but it didn't happen because of COVID, unfortunately. And then the ministry consulted with the camp management, and all camp managers wanted practical action. We're telling the minister that practical action would be asking for more street lights, because there were some locations which didn't have street lights. And the minister was worried because he thought I'm the one who said so. So they called me, and they're like, Denise, I hear you're asking for more street lights into the RE4R camps. I was like, well, if you want me to. But then before I finished the sentence, he was like, we want you to go and do what you did within those camps into other camps. You know, that's a lot of pressure. And I've had the same kind of pressure from the Minister of Energy saying, Denise, you can do RE4R, you can do RE4R rather than RE4R. So we know there is a need, and under RE4R, we thought would model, pilot RE4R and, inspire other people to do the same. And we've seen situations, but we know the evidence, we need to gather more evidence and to continue doing the advocacy. So the work that started small can grow big. Thank you.
Amazing, Denise. Well, watch this space, everybody. RE4R. That brings us to the end of this session. I want to say a massive, huge thank you to everybody who's been on this wonderful panel for so generously providing that insight and support and thoughts and graciously giving their advice, but also for the chat. I've never seen a chat so busy. So if you haven't got on the chat and you haven't shared who you are and where you're at, get in there now in the last couple of minutes. But quite frankly, a massive thank you to everybody who part of this, and also massive good luck for 2021. I hope that it just it starts being kind of kind to us. So good luck and thank you very much to everybody.